Good evening, everyone out there on the MYBC Consulting Facebook page. Woo! Thank you for tuning in on a Tuesday night. I think you could call this also afternoon. There's some people that say when it hits 5 o'clock, it turns night, but when it hits 6 o'clock, it turns night. But I'm going to say, I wish you a happy late afternoon. And it's time for another edition of the MYBC Virtual Bookstore Author Series. You know, that time that I bring authors, whether they're an author of a cookbook, a comic book, a kid's book, nonfiction, fiction, and bring them on to chat about their journey on the writing journey. And I'm going to remember this time, Dr. Guy, that if you have any questions for our guests today, I stay present for our interview, so I can't read your questions. This is our time together. So put them into the comments, and Guy will definitely come back and look at any of the comments and answer any of your questions. I always forget to do that. So please introduce yourself.
Yeah, you have to unmute first, right?
Yes, yes.
So, yeah, thank you so much for inviting me and including me here and sharing a little bit. Although I'm a couple of years after this writing and publishing those books and everything too. But yeah, so my quick story, born and raised in a little country in the Middle East called Israel. So I'm a former Israeli military, and I've been with the Israeli Defense Forces. You know, when I was younger, from there, I was little in personal training. And then my dream was to be a veterinarian, help dogs and cats. So I have some degrees in nutrition for people, participated in some research, 1996. But yeah, I moved to vet school in Europe for 5 years. And we moved to Canada here, my wife and I, 15 years ago.
Okay.
I have two girls that are now 15 and 18. So you can say now it's been 20 years in the veterinary practice and 10 years since I started my entrepreneurship journey and everything. So
oh, beautiful. So there's lots of good stuff for me to unpack there. I'd love to know why, okay, military, veterinary, they almost rhyme, but they don't. So how did you get involved with animals? Like, what led you down to that journey?
Yeah, so when I was little, and I always loved, I love the animals. And actually, I remember we had a vet clinic across the street in Tel Aviv, in Israel, across from my parents' place. And I went and I volunteered there, in the summertime. And that's kind of where the idea came and decided to go to vet school, really.
Wow. And you said it's 5 years?
8.
8.
So yeah, so I have my first degree from the Hebrew University, right? And then you can go and do the medicine school. So altogether 8 years of schooling, yeah.
Wow. And that's what you're currently still doing?
Very part-time. So yeah, and especially since the beginning of the pandemic, kind of more part-time into the profession, a lot of changes with this profession and involved with other businesses from home. But that's the background, yeah.
Okay. So of the pet world, I've always wanted to have a conversation with a pet, with a vet about pets.
Yeah, I won't be able to help you a conversation with a pet. I'm a medicine.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. So what pet is the hardest to work on? Or what pet, or okay, first of all, 2 questions. What animal is the hardest to work on in the veterinary world? Yeah, answer that one first.
Yeah, so for me, it's easy. Like, I'm very specific. I only know dogs and cats.
Okay.
So I don't touch anything else for many, many years. That's kind of my niche, is a lot of mostly orthopedic surgeries in dogs and cats.
Okay.
But yeah, so I don't have experience with other species. But I hear horses are pretty challenging. I know my daughter, we have 2, and it's pretty challenging.
Right.
It's very physical too, but that's what I know, dogs and cats. So.
And you said orthopedic surgery. Are you specialized?
So I have a lot of certificates, and yeah, I've been doing them for almost 20 years, so a lot. I'm also in the general practice. but majority is a lot of knee surgeries and fractures for dogs and cats and conditions like that. So.
Oh, fascinating. I just love that. There's so much right now. If anything, in this last 2.5 years, we saw the advent of a lot of people finding dogs and cats they wanted to, adopt the pets. It was either that or making a lot of sourdough bread. That was like the two things in the last 2 years that people were doing. And it's fascinating to hear that that's what you do and how we take care of our pets. Like they're like our little human beings, but they're definitely in the family. And it's so sad when somebody loses their pet.
For sure.
Yeah. So let's fast forward to your book writing journey, or let's go back in time to what you were doing that you wanted to write a book. How did that come to be?
Yeah. So 10 years ago, I kind of started pivoting and frankly, like moving to the BC, and we're immigrants here. And, I don't know if your audience mostly Canadians, but I say beautiful British Columbia also stands for bring cash. And when you move here as new immigrants, especially with families, and honestly, I was looking for ways to, kind of looking for the edge for my family. And I found myself in, just because of my certificates for people, training and nutrition with network marketing 2012. Mm-hmm. And that led me into the personal development world and everything like that. And from there, I saw really a need back then, specifically with working with people in their 40s and 50s. Back then, that they travel a lot, right? We don't have that. I mean, now it's picking up, but and that's kind of when I started, and I realized the network marketing is not really viable, great products, but a lot of, smoking mirrors and not really kind of business. And this is when I was started working with a guy by the name of Russell Brunson, ClickFunnels. Mm-hmm. So that's how it came about.
Okay. There's a couple of things there that I'd love to unpack. And you just mentioned something. Oh, about self-help. Okay. I don't know about you, but this is my little area in my house. This is like where majority of my cookbooks live, because of course it's near my kitchen. And I have a little reading corner over here. And I'm going to say 75 to 80% of them are various different forms of self-help books. Yeah. And there's some fun fiction, in there to kind of take the mind away. What would you say has been the top, say, 2 or 3 self-help books that have helped you, Dr. Guy?
Yeah, there's so many. Oh my goodness! But I would say definitely Think and Grow Rich is one of them, and I would say probably As a Man Thinking as well. If I can think about kind of how the first books I was reading,
that's definitely a good one. I actually took about 2 years to read that book. I had an old copy. It was a reproduced, but it was done in the old form, which I know that book has been updated and some of the language has been changed, so it's a little bit easier. And it's such a unique book that you get into it. You almost have to read it, implement. You can't read it from start to finish. It just
and is that you're referring to Think and Grow Rich?
Yes. Yeah.
And just to kind of echo you and what you said, I've been to the memorial, like online, with Bob Proctor a couple of weeks ago, who we lost, right? I had the pleasure to participate in live events with him a couple of years ago, and oh my goodness, so many dozens and dozens of hours consuming his content and philosophies. And I think even his last video, he's holding the old version, of Think and Grow Rich. And he said, I'm reading this book for the last 52 years.
Oh.
And he's sharing with him the original one that he was gifted. So he was reading. So yeah.
It's definitely one you can pick up and you get definitely new little nuggets.
Yeah, for sure.
So before we get into your writing of your, I looked on Amazon, you've got 2 books that you've written. Is how important are books in your life?
So, like for me, I tell my wife, you know, if you ever decide to walk away, whatever, uh, so take everything, take the clothes, leave me the Vitamix, okay?
Okay.
Leave me the books, and that's about it. You know, and maybe the Ninja air fryer, but no. But yeah, definitely the books. Yeah, so I'm all about books. You know, people ask on Facebook, what is it that you have a lot of? You know, what is that? You know, and for me, it's books. Like, you know, I listen on Audible and I consume books every month. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, Dr. Guy. It's books and art. The 2 creative spirits just speak to me
Yeah,
so well.
yeah,
So let's get into your book writing journey. What are the
yeah.
2 titles of your books?
So here's the thing, and how those books just I like to keep it real and you know, be honest. So at that time I was working with Russell Brunson, and I actually created an information product. It was a course that is helping traveling entrepreneurs who wants to stay fit. I'm also affiliated with a company called TRX Suspension Training, and they have functional trainers that you can train anywhere, and I've been doing that for the last 13 14 years. So I actually created a course for 4 weeks that is supporting people who travel with the movement that they can do anywhere. And back then, that's kind of was my business, mostly traveling entrepreneurs, that they can look after the nutrition and mindset and habits. So when I was working with Russell Brunson back then, he's like, you need like tripwire. And I'm like, what's tripwire? Oh, those are books that you give, because he's teaching the value ladder. So, you know, somebody's coming in, you give them some great content, and then you sell them on a little, you know, a product, $7. And then you have another one that is 97, and then you have a 997, and then you have like a coaching. So I was building it based on, you know, I paid him like 50 grand back then. But so he's like, yeah, you need books. Okay. So what do you do with your, you know, so we created those books. So one of them is the suspension training piece, and it's kind of like a guide that you can start from a beginner and everything too. And the other one was mostly ketogenic, more like what I call ketotarian, for people who are more vegetarian as well, and kind of the science and behind that as well. And, you know, back then it was just starting this whole trend. And that's how those books came to life.
Love that. Love that. So with the first book, could somebody, like, I love having more than one use for anything. There's one of my very famous Food Network stars, Elton Brown, and he talks about in your kitchen, you shouldn't have a unitasker. So like your Vitamix isn't a unitasker. It does lots of stuff.
Yeah.
From hot soups, blenders, it can do a lot of stuff. So that's a really good kitchen gadget that you should have in your kitchen. But having, say, one fork that all it does is probe for temperature, that doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
So having this book, it sounds like to me, there's some core principles that could go beyond the traveling salesperson who needs to take care of themselves. Because aren't we all traveling in life down a road at one time or another, metaphorically as well as figuratively?
Yeah. So those books are just, you know, super practical into training and nutrition. But yeah, definitely one of the now approaching 50 lessons is to stay functional, right? And even now, even actually today, I was using the TRX, even though I was at the gym, just looking at the pandemic, right? So a lot of people, they got a home gym and, you know, TRXs and all of that. And it's just kind of a great way to stay functional and add on in terms of, you know, training and movement, and taking us back to how we're supposed to move as human beings and celebrate movement. And there is a lot of that in the book and kind of practical ways to do it.
So in the second book about ketogenic, love that topic.
Yeah.
It's definitely been buzzword back in the day to low carb with Dr. Atkins.
Yeah.
Now it's ketogenic. It's much more scientific in approach. So break down how you wrote that book and what.
Yeah, and it was interesting because in order to I had to go through a photo shoot as well back then and everything. So it really helped me get ready for it really quick. And I'm like, it's a great thing. And again, I'm very balanced in my approach. So I don't believe in just the one thing. But yeah, it's a great thing to reboost your metabolism, to reset your cortisol and insulin. And those are for a lot of people. Those are what I call the sick and inflammatory hormones that unfortunately a lot of people, they don't know how to regulate. And I think, obviously it's not the be all and everything going keto, but it's a great way to reset those two hormones and get people results, with inflammation and yes, weight loss, but also energy and sleep. And I've seen, coaching a lot of people through it, great results. Is it sustainable? I don't believe so in my eyes. So yeah, but it's kind of, a great reset button for a lot of people who are going in and wanting to start a health journey sometimes and get results quicker, and then at least they buy in and they learn, how to adapt to a healthy lifestyle and living rather than just doing one thing. But yeah.
So the timeline that it took you to write book one, so from first word down on a piece of paper or in your computer to publish, and in the second book, first word to publish, how long?
I think it was pretty quick back then, to be honest with you. Working with Russell Brunson, he's like, you have to immerse yourself. That's kind of his thing. So you have to go and just get it done. So I don't think it was much or anything like that. I think the techie part is what I needed more help with. Back then, I'm not super techie, anything like that. So all the Amazon stuff and the cover, you probably know a lot about it. And finding somebody who can do the design. And then I think Amazon requested me to change the title of the TRX, the suspension training book, so I don't confuse it with the company. So there was some legal stuff, but it was pretty quick actually. Honestly, when you get your mind and you set your mind to something, things can happen very quickly.
True enough. So how do these books continue to serve you 6 years later?
Yeah, so they're just selling on Amazon. I did not publish them to sell on Amazon. I published them as a giveaway for my this information product, which I don't run anymore. And yeah, I have people reaching out and selling and just helping some people with their journey and stuff like that. And yeah, that's pretty much about it. But yeah, for me it was probably also a time that calling changed, and I really went into more like health and wellness and working with people and not just dogs and cats. So that's kind of what this time period stands for me. And beyond the books, they introduced me to a community of people that forever changed my life, around Russell Brunson, and seeing people who created brands and serving others. And, one of my friends, Kylene, she created a brand and she's selling now over 100 million a year. Lady Boss, and inspired over 2 million girls, with a health journey. And now she's got supplements, just kind of being around those people. And it was mostly the people, right? That it brought into my life and connections. But
I love that. So it's been a great vehicle, both physically as well as non-physically, kind of sitting there on the shelf for you.
Yeah, for sure.
So it begs the question, Dr. Guy, is there another book in you with what your journey has been thus far since 6 years ago?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I would say right now I'm in a complete different, more like coaching entrepreneurs and working online and leadership development. I think it's about 3 to 5 years away.
Okay.
That's how I feel now. It can change, but right now, yeah, I'm in a completely different place in my life and market and industry and what I do for work and living. And it's kind of, I would say, yeah, I would say that maybe the second chapter right now, is third, kind of over the last 3.5 years. And I think 3, 5 years, I can actually see that.
I love that. I love that. Like, and that's part of every self-help book, a good self-help book. They talk about that visualization of what the future is going to be like and working
Yeah.
towards it. I can see another book on the shelf.
But it's going to be completely different and not a
Right.
practical guide for this, right? It will be more about life, entrepreneurship, leadership, parenting, busy, medical professionals who change their career path, and more like that. So,
Oh, I think there's a lot of people out there that might need that book more than 3 years from now. There, Dr. Guy.
yeah. You have to go through a lot of, tests to get the testimony, right? And
Oh, yes,
yeah, for sure.
absolutely. So just to wrap this up, the question I love to ask is one of two, and you can answer one of these two questions is, who do you think would be a good person for someone to buy these books for? Because there's still purpose. Someone doesn't write books and leave them somewhere. There's still core purpose on these two books here in this world, in the book world. Or what would you say to someone who wants to write a book?
Yeah. So someone who wants to write a book, now being more entrepreneur and a marketer, I would start with the end result, because I've seen a lot of people writing books and it's very exciting for them.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, this book cannot necessarily serve and survive in the marketplace.
Mm-hmm.
Not just survive, I'm actually talking about thriving, right?
Right.
So
right.
I would start with the question, and I love questions, and I believe the quality of our lives is equivalent to the quality of the questions that we ask from ourselves as well.
Ooh.
Not just people, ask from ourselves. And it's like, who is this book going to serve? How it's going to serve and help them?
Mm-hmm.
And kind of start from there and see if there is a real need, number one, and then go and write it. It's almost kind of the opposite from what most people are thinking. Oh, it's so exciting, I'll write it, and a lot of people will buy it and read it, it's going to be amazing. And then crickets, they put it there and nobody cares. So I would start like, how what you have within you, within experience, knowledge and everything, how it's going to change somebody else, how it's going to serve them with whatever industry, health, well, it doesn't matter, right? What value it's going to put in the marketplace, and kind of start from there, almost reverse engineer. That's kind of the way I see it, but hey.
Great advice, definitely great advice. Thank you so much, Dr. Guy, for joining me tonight. We'll make sure that we'll put the link for where people can go buy your books in the comments afterwards. I'm going to suggest that I think the keto one, with you said there's got a bit of vegetarianism in there. I've got a couple of friends that I'm going to send it to, and I know that's also a big question about making sure you get that whole nutrition, because a lot of times people think keto is just eating a lot of meat and cheese and eggs, and it's definitely not that. And having it coming from an expert through me as a suggestion to them, it definitely has much higher value. So thank you so much.
And thank you for the opportunity to jump on and share and do what you do.
I love it. I so value books so much, and I value the people, the authors that take the words to put them down into the books so we can share it. And with that being said, I often lead this, go grab a book, make yourself a cup of tea, cuddle on the couch or your favorite reading spot, take your mind, body, and spirit to a place that you've never been through the pages of a book that have been experienced by somebody else. So they will change your life. So thank you so much. And now we'll see you again next Tuesday. Oh, Dr. Guy, I'm booked up until August with authors. So, and that's every single week now until August. I've got unique authors that I'm going to be talking to. So I'm so excited. Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye.